truck, man. Get out of here, man. Come on, man. Come on, dog. Get off the road, man. Come on, dog. Get that dog right there, bro. Talking about my wheel, that dog right there. Don't come up by that dog right there. That dog right there bite my wheel.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Florida Hood Blogs. Today we're going to talk about the worst place to live in Florida. Now, I already did this video, and I did an update on this video. However, I was on the internet today, and I ran across something that worried me a little bit. Today we're going to be driving through Immokalee, Florida, and Immokalee was number 2 on my list. And I want to let you guys know what I ran into on the internet. So this website called Wall Street 24/7 published an article for the 50 worst cities in the United States, and they have a handful of cities from Florida. Now, when I first saw the list, I saw places like Shady Hills, Brooksville, Lehigh Acres, Immokalee, and Avon Park. And the first thing that hit my mind was plagiarism. They gotta be copying me, because we've talked about all these cities on my channel, and there's another city that they have on their list that I didn't include because since I haven't been there, I'm not going to talk about it. When I made my list of the worst places to live in Florida, I told you guys the raw truth. That was my personal opinion. That's what I thought was the worst places to live in Florida. I was honest as I could be. And now I see these same towns popping up in lists all over the place. And the only thing that comes to my mind is plagiarism, because there were lists of the worst places to live in Florida before I made my list, and now all the other lists on the internet are starting to correlate with what I made, and it makes me feel that my hard work and research is kind of being, plagiarized here. Or the other thing that's possible is that I'm a genius and my observation skills are downright perfect, and they correlate very well with actual statistics. In other words, my observation skills are good enough that I can make a list based off of my observations, and that list can actually correlate with some statistics, with some analytics, because these are newspapers, so they're probably looking at analytics. However, what they're missing is on-the-ground information. The first city that they have listed on their list at number 10 is Shady Hills. So they think that Shady Hills is the 10th worst place in the United States to live. I could not disagree more with that. I did list Shady Hills on my most redneck places in Florida because of its lack of sophistication, and that wasn't really a real list. That was just places that are just really kind of redneck, so that wasn't a scientific formula to Shady Hills, but it's a town that I'm very familiar with. I have friends that live there, and they're dying for me to move to Shady Hills. If you don't know where Shady Hills is, it's south of Spring Hill, Florida. Before we even get into this list, let me just tell you guys that I'm not familiar with the entire country, but I am familiar with the Southeast and some parts of the Midwest, and there's no way that if I had to move out of Florida, there's the worst places in Florida are better than the better places in some other parts of the state. Some of these places that are on this list, Brooksville and Lehigh Acres and Shady Hills, if you gave me this choice of moving out of Florida or staying in the 5 worst cities in Florida according to their list, I would pick one of those 5 cities. There's places in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. Are you kidding me? Louisiana. I've been to these places. I'm familiar with them. South Carolina, even. I'm familiar with these places. And I would rather live in the worst place in Florida on any of these lists than in any of the towns in some of these states. So I like Florida a lot. And some of the cities that are on this worst list, I have friends and family that live there. So even though I'm out here telling you, hey, these are probably the worst places in Florida to live, I got friends and family that live in these places, and they live all right. They're happy there. It's not snowing in Florida. Yo, Florida is Florida. You're never more than like an hour and 20 minutes away from a beach anywhere in the state. There's no way that Florida, I mean, I don't feel that Florida deserves to have 5 of the 50 or whatever, 6 of the 50 worst places. I don't agree with that. But anyways, the 10th on their list, so they're considering Shady Hills, Florida to be the 10th worst city in the whole country. Of the 50 cities that they consider the worst, they consider Shady Hills to be the 10th. Okay, I have friends that live there. They mentioned that the town has a drug problem and that their drug overdose or poisoning deaths is about 30 out of 100,000. That's about 6 times higher than the national murder rate. So basically, you're 6 times more likely to die from a drug overdose in this town than you are to be murdered anywhere else in the country. That is a very disappointing statistic. However, that statistic reflects the entire Hernando, Pasco, Citrus, and other counties, Dixie, Levy, all these counties in this whole region of Florida have an incredibly horrible problem with drug use. So it's not just Shady Hills that has a problem. Inverness has a problem. Hernando has a problem. All of these counties in this region of Florida, let's talk about Polk County. All these counties in this region are plagued with extremely bad drug overdose problems. Even Sarasota and Manatee County have horrible drug overdose rates. And that's what I tell people when they're looking at the best schools or they're looking at the best place for their family, and they look at stuff like crime. Crime is so important to people. They look at the murder rates and say, oh, I would never live in this place. It's got a high murder rate. Yeah, but you're 6 times more likely to overdose and kill yourself than you are to have somebody else kill you in some of these places. There's a lot more than meets the eye when it comes to looking at these statistics and making sense of these statistics. That's why it's really good to have an on-the-ground perspective, because I don't care how many statistics you got, there's some things that are just not accounted for when you talk about statistics. Immokalee, the town we're driving through, is the hardest working town in the United States. There's no other town that works as hard. The tomato picking and the sugarcane is some of the hardest work in the country. Then there's the sod that's there. It's another thing that they do here. This is some of the hardest working people in the United States. And I love their good Mexican food. I have friends in Immokalee. I go to Immokalee just to enjoy the place, enjoy eating there, enjoy fishing Lake Trafford. So even though we're talking about Immokalee, my friends in Immokalee, I love your town. I love your great people, great hardworking people, nothing but family. So we're not trying to talk down on Immokalee. What we're doing here is just being honest. Life in Immokalee is hard. People work extremely hard. They get paid very little, and not trying to talk down on your town. If anything, I love your town. It's part of my county, Collier, and I have great memories there as well. So we're not trying to talk down on Immokalee. If anything, these are the hardest working people. The problem is that working hard doesn't pay good. Just because you work hard doesn't mean you're going to live good, because the hardest paying jobs happen to be the worst paying jobs happen to be the hardest jobs. So there's no correlation between how hard you work and how much money you make. That's why I talk crap on YouTube, because it's pretty easy to do that. Before you get mad at me for talking bad about Immokalee, why don't you get mad at the landlords who own these properties and are charging ridiculous rents? That's who you really need to be mad at. So don't be mad at me for driving through with a camera. Be mad at the people who are paying people $7 an hour when they're supposed to be getting paid more. Be mad at the company that charges you for transportation, knowing that your employees need transportation because none of them have a driver's license. Be mad at the grocery stores that sell you old food and not bringing you good things to eat for your family. Be mad at the people who own the properties and the condominiums and the apartments where you live, who don't take care of them, who come to pick up the rent but don't care about the walls leaking or the roof leaking. So before you get mad at me for making a YouTube video, get mad at your slumlord, because they're not landlords, they're slumlords. Get mad at the people who own properties in Immokalee and rather rent them out instead of selling them to a single family so they can be able to have homes. And everybody has to live 20 to a house. because the slumlords are making it impossible for the regular people to be able to buy a house like anywhere else in the country where a working class salary buys you a home. So before you get mad at me for talking crap about Immokalee, get mad at the people who are slumlords. Get mad at the people who own these agricultural companies. There's a new law in Florida that makes it illegal to hire anyone who's not documented. The only industry in the entire state of Florida that will continue to be allowed to have illegal workers is agricultural. Yes, the agriculture industry will be allowed to continue to hire illegal workers without a single problem, while everybody else doesn't have that luxury or connections to make something like that happen. So don't be mad at me, be mad at the people who pay those salaries and who make laws to ensure that they can continue to exploit the poor. That's who you need to be mad at. Back to Shady Hills, Florida. By the way, on my list, Immokalee was number 2, but number 1 was Pahokee, and Pahokee would not qualify for this list because of its population. It had to be over 8,000 people. Therefore, Pahokee wouldn't really qualify for this list, which would mean that under their standard, Immokalee would have been number 1 on my list. Where do I even begin to illustrate why Immokalee is worse than Shady Hills? Well, let me tell you some on-the-ground things about Shady Hills. I'm very familiar with Shady Hills. I made documentaries before I got into the Florida Hood Blogs for pigeon racing sport in Shady Hills. Those documentaries probably have about 500,000 views put together. Shady Hills, the houses there are massive. The people are retired. These people bought houses in Shady Hills for something like $100,000. The houses are probably worth $300,000 to $400,000 today. If you go to Google Earth and you write Shady Hills, just zoom right into Shady Hills. You're going to notice that these are big 3 and 4 bedroom houses with massive pools. And you're going to notice that they have about 2 or 3 sheds each. Those are not actually sheds. They're pigeon lofts. Yes, I used to do homing pigeon races. So those are not sheds. Those structures behind the houses are pigeon lofts. Some of those pigeon lofts in the Shady Hills neighborhood average $50,000, $20,000, $30,000 just the structure. And some of those pigeon coops, pigeon lofts as they're called, can have up to $100,000 in pigeons. That's a recreational thing. So all those buildings are stuffed with pigeons, and some of those pigeons can be worth up to $20,000 or $30,000 each. That is a lot of money. The houses in Shady Hills are very nice. Let me explain to you why their income is so low. Because the people who bought houses there bought them in a time when they were very affordable, so they got amazing deals. So these people, and a lot of them were foreclosures, so they bought them cash. When you buy your house cash, you don't need a mortgage. A mortgage means that if a house is worth $100,000, you end up paying $210,000. So here is $110,000 in interest to a bank. That's 4 years of your life that you work to give it to a bank. The people in Shady Hills don't need to work those 4 to 5 years because they bought their houses cash. And because they bought their houses cash, they didn't have to pay $100,000 in interest to a bank or an insurance, which is basically a bank as well. So who lives in Shady Hills? I know about 50 people who live in Shady Hills. There's Cubans and Puerto Ricans, and there's old retired guys from New York and Boston and Wisconsin who race pigeons. It's a very expensive hobby. In Shady Hills is the largest pigeon racing club in the United States. These guys are retired. They've already made their money. Therefore, they don't need to be making income. If you're retired, you've already made money. You don't need to be part of the workforce. It's a beautiful wooded area. The average house is 1 to 2 acres. They're big, nice houses. A lot of those houses, people got them at great deals during the recession. And they don't need to work. They bought their houses outright. They're usually self-employed people. They don't need to make a whole lot of income. And yes, there's not a lot to do in the area, and they include things to do in getting groceries. However, most people have a commute to the Tampa area, not just in Shady Hills, but Spring Hill, Brooksville. Everybody in that area has a commute to the Tampa area. And in Shady Hills, you're about 30 minutes from Wesley Chapel, Land Lakes, and some of the best suburbs in Tampa. So you're going daily, 5 days a week or 6 days a week into Tampa for your weekday commute. So it makes sense that when you go on that commute, you'll get your groceries on the way in one of those suburbs, which have just about everything you need. So sometimes statistics and on-the-ground information just don't add up. I can guarantee you that I would tell you 100 places in Georgia and Alabama that I would consider way worse than Shady Hills, Florida. And I'm going to send this to my friends in Shady Hills, Florida, and they're going to be like, what on earth? There's no way our town is the 10th worst place to live in the United States. Anyways, let's move along to the next town on their list that is in Florida. At number 11 is Silver Spring Shores. Basically, it is a suburb outside of Ocala, and they say that there are weak economical indicators, and this is the reason why it is the 12th worst place, or 11th, whatever place, worst to live in the United States of America. Okay, Ocala and South Ocala, see, they don't know what's really going on there. Marion Oaks, Bellevue, and Silver Spring Shores, these southern suburbs of Ocala will eventually be very good real estate. It's a good area to invest, I think. The amount of Puerto Ricans moving to north central Florida is incredible, and Ocala is going to be second after Tampa and Orlando to pick up on these Puerto Ricans that are moving. They're fleeing Puerto Rico at a massive rate, and they're also fleeing the Northeast. And this area of Ocala is going to get filled in with a lot of Puerto Ricans. Would I want to live there? Probably not. Would I buy investment properties to rent out? Definitely, because whenever there's groups of people coming from other places, it slowly starts to drive the rents up and up. They don't understand really this area. It mentions that people there don't work. It mentions that the nearest hospital is 10 miles away. I have a hospital 3 miles away, and it could take me 20 minutes to get there in season. So I live in North Naples. I have a hospital 3 or 4 miles away. In season, during rush hour, I could be 20 minutes to get to that hospital. It's right down the road. I can see the light from the ceiling. I can climb on my roof of my house, look over there, and I can see the light from the hospital. If there's a traffic jam, it's going to take me 20 minutes. So some of these indicators they're using just don't make sense to me. But anyways, would I consider it on the worst places in the country to live? Definitely not. Silver Spring Shores, like I said, just another one of those South Ocala suburbs. And when these Puerto Ricans keep coming over here, it's going to be the median home value according to them is $79,000, and the unemployment rate is 16%. Keep in mind, these are retired people, and if you're moving, think about this: a person that buys a $79,000 house probably isn't financing it; they're probably buying it cash, and they don't need to really be employed. If you're buying a house cash, you might have a side hustle, something like that. The poverty rate is 28%, but if you're buying your house for $78,000, you don't need to make a whole lot of income. Number 12 on their list is Beverly Hills, Florida. I did a drive around of Beverly Hills, Florida. It's on my channel. You can look it up. And it's actually a talkover video, and I mentioned on that video how there's no way, because this town keeps popping up on the worst list of Florida. They have it here at number 12. So it mentions here that it's one of cities that are, let's see here, they're struggling financially. Actually, no, they're not. Because according to them, the median home value is $70,000. I have seen livable houses in Beverly Hills, Florida for $50,000. So they're not struggling financially. You know who's struggling financially? The people here in North Naples who have to come up with a mortgage for a $400,000 house. See, this is where these statistics don't add up. See, these statistics that they use to come up with these lists, Beverly Hills, Florida, you can get a house there for $70,000, like a legitly livable house. But they think because there's low incomes, if you buy a house cash for $70,000, you can live on $15,000 a year. So if the poverty rate in this area is low, I bet you those people are still living way better than the average person in South Florida who has to come up with $2,400 for a rent or mortgage. So Beverly Hills, Florida, look at the video. The grass is cut in most of the houses. There's 3 or 4 houses that were abandoned. It mentions here that there's a lot of drug use in the town. That's what most people told me when I went there. However, it's Florida. There's drug use everywhere. Beverly Hills, number 12. Again, I would rather, before I move to Immokalee, I would move to Beverly Hills. The houses are affordable. There's not a lot of work in the area, but if you're buying a house for $70,000, dude, you don't need a lot of work. You can buy that. You can save up $70,000, buy a livable house, and then live on $20,000 a year. It's not like that's not possible. The math of living in Immokalee is a bedroom is $550. Like a bedroom, I mean, like in one of these mobile homes or one of these trailers that are falling apart, is $550 a month. For $100 more, you can rent the whole house in Beverly Hills. And actually, these mobile homes here that we're looking at, if you had $80, $90, $100,000, and you went to the owner of these mobile homes and say, hey, I want to buy on a quarter acre this mobile home that's falling apart, I got $100,000. You know what the answer would be? No. Notice how none of these properties in Immokalee have for sale signs. Notice, pay attention. As we're driving around, there are no for sale signs anywhere in this town. Cash money moves really strongly because Latinos, Immokalee is like 90% Latino, something like that. And Latinos do not invest their money in 401ks or in mutual funds, none of that crap. They have their money liquid in the bank. So if a property, and they're really big on owning real estate, that's the way Latinos think. So notice that there is nothing for sale. You go into any street in Naples, Florida, and everything is for sale. Like a third of the houses on the neighborhood could be for sale along the coast. You come here to Immokalee, nothing is for sale. Why would you sell it when you can rent it for and make $1,500 a month for a mobile home? It just doesn't make sense. So pay attention as we're driving around. There's no for sale signs, and there aren't even that many. I didn't see any for rent signs on this trip, so there's not any vacancy anywhere in this town. So that's the Florida factor. You're not making a lot of money. And by the way, let's say you want to work in Immokalee, Florida. Yeah, do you see how many people are walking around? You can just pick somebody up off the street and they'll go work for whatever price you offer them. So it's not like your labor. So now your labor means nothing because there's so much labor force available. Your rents are high. Housing is unaffordable for the local standard. It just doesn't make sense. I wouldn't pay for a beat up mobile home like that, $90,000, $100,000. You can offer somebody $100,000 cash for one of these beat up mobile homes, and they won't sell it. It's insane. Because with with $70,000, you can get a house in Beverly Hills, Florida, concrete block house on a nice little hill with some nice neighbors who mow their lawn, don't have chickens running around, and don't play cumbia music at 3 in the morning. Which I do that. I can understand how that's a problem. I do that. Okay, so it's not the hood. Immokalee is the hood. It looks hood. It is hood, and Beverly Hills is not hood. The people in Citrus County think it's hood because they don't know what a hood is. If people in Citrus County saw Immokalee, their jaws were dropped. They have no idea what a real hood is about. So guys, don't trust these statistics. Don't trust them. Beverly Hills. If I was retiring on a really tight budget, I would consider moving there. If I was a working class person and had cash money to buy a place and just wanted something affordable in Florida, I'd move there. I wouldn't recommend Immokalee. I'll tell you that much. The housing is unaffordable. Your labor means absolutely nothing. So let's keep going with this list, guys. So they have Beverly Hills on number 12 and Silver Spring Shores on number 11. I still don't see a city on this list that I wouldn't want to live in. And actually, it's weird because I am familiar with all these places. I was just there in Beverly Hills, and I was there in the daytime. I was there in the nighttime. It's not that bad of a place. In fact, Beverly Hills, there's an Ace Hardware in Beverly Hills, and they keep their mulch bags outside. I live in Naples, Florida. The Ace Hardware here cannot keep their mulch bags outside it's in Golden Gate City, they would be gone. Honestly, like if in Bonita Springs or Golden Gate City, if they kept their mulch bags outside at the Ace Hardware, they would be gone. And in Beverly Hills, they keep their mulch bags outside. That wouldn't fly here in some parts of Naples. They'd be gone, like literally. Another thing about Beverly Hills is that they're right across from Black Diamond. It's an extraordinarily wealthy community with one of the most prestigious golf courses in the state of Florida. Look it up, Black Diamond. That's right across from Beverly Hills. So millionaires are not going to live in a place that doesn't have nice restaurants, good businesses. You can run down to Inverness and they have a Marshalls. There's a lot to do in this area. Not immediately there. There's not a lot, but because it's all residential. But Black Diamond is there. Those are really wealthy people. There's this restaurant right there called Cattle Dogs. They're amazing. It's not a bad area. I mean, you're within access to a 20-minute drive. You're somewhere decent. Marshalls, Publix, all the stuff you need. Inverness has it all. So the fact that, Black Diamond is like right next to Beverly Hills, there wouldn't be millionaires living in that location unless there's something special there that made it worth their while. Just know that. There isn't going to be a neighborhood like Black Diamond in a place that doesn't have anything. And one of the reasons that they considered Beverly Hills to be on that list is because there's nothing to do according to them. There's no groceries and stuff like that. There wouldn't be Black Diamond there if there wasn't good stuff in the area. So I don't get how they come up with these lists. Okay, the next Florida town is Buenaventura Lakes, Florida. This is, from what I believe, it's a suburb south of Orlando. It's 33% Puerto Rican, and a lot of Puerto Ricans are going to continue to come, and it creates a situation where people come from Puerto Rico, they don't have any income, they don't have the greatest education, they don't have a lot of employment potential, and the prices get driven up. It's a horrible, people think because Orlando and it's near the theme parks and all that there's a lot going on, but really all it is a community that is coming from somewhere else, probably fleeing problems. I can understand why it's on the list of like top 10 in Florida maybe, but number 20 in the country. It's right next to Disney. It's right in the middle of all the theme parks. I mean, that it wouldn't mean anything to me, but for a lot of people, that would be very nice if they have kids that want to be near that. I personally wouldn't want to be in that, but there's places like Fort Knox, Kentucky, where like you can drive for 50 miles, and the only thing you're going to look at on a depressing. I mean, you guys watch my channel. Like, you look over a river. It's brown. The Ohio River is brown. The trees are brown. The dirt is brown. And you just want to jump off a cliff because you're so depressed. Those are the type of places that exist in the United States of America. And when you look at places like Buenaventura Lakes, which is number 19 on their list, which is like 10 minutes from Orlando Parks or something like that, I know 90% of the people right now in like Western Kentucky or Southern Indiana are like, yeah, I wish I was there right now. So I really don't see how this is a national list, how this town is the 20th worst. Now, Florida does have a problem where incomes and cost of housing don't add up, but it says here that the median home value is $163,000. So that's not unaffordable. It's not like it's $300,000 or $250,000. So I don't agree with that town being on that list. Okay, I missed Immokalee. They have Immokalee at number 17, and I'm going to agree that Immokalee should be on the list of 50 worst cities to live in the United States. However, it says that a median home value is $110,000. Believe me, brother, you ain't going to get a house in Immokalee for $110,000. You ain't going to get a single wide mobile home that's falling apart for $110,000. Slumlords have a grip on Immokalee, and you're not going to get a house in Immokalee for that kind of price. And it's not even an issue of are the houses worth that. It's an issue of availability. There isn't anything on the market. Immokalee's poverty rate is a staggering 42%. Yes, that's incredibly high. It's 3 times the U.S. average. They have the population listed at 26,000 people. I'm pretty sure Immokalee is pushing 60 to 70,000 people because, according if Bonita Springs has 67,000 people, Bonita Springs doesn't have more people than Immokalee. A lot of people in Immokalee are illegal. They have children. There's like in a single wide mobile home, there's 10, 15 people living. I'm pretty sure that Immokalee's population could be even as high as 60, 70,000. I'm pretty sure. It's not 25,000 people. There's some discrepancies with the population. There's got to be at least 40,000 people in Immokalee. So we'll see when the census comes up. I'm pretty sure Immokalee's population has to be at least 40,000 people. So I don't. It says here 26,000, but there's a lot of illegals. A lot of people cramped up. I do agree that Immokalee should be about 17. That makes sense in the country. I don't think that the population in Immokalee is 26,000 people. That doesn't even make sense because Naples Park has 6,000 people, and that would put Immokalee at about 4 times Naples Park. Yeah, there's a lot more people than that in Immokalee. So we'll see what the new census actually says, but I think Immokalee's population is a little surprised. I think it's going to be surprising to see Immokalee's real population if they can actually get a census. It will be interesting to see Immokalee's population, and I do agree that Immokalee kind of fits within the 50 worst cities in the country. Okay, then they got Avon Park, Florida. Number 25, the median home value is $68,000. For $68,000, you can get a very nice house in Avon Park, Florida. You get a good deal in Avon Park, Florida. But would I consider Avon Park, Florida in the top 50 worst places to live in the country? I would disagree with that. The weather, it's a very depressing place to live, don't get me wrong, okay? But, the thing about Avon Park is it is a depressing place. But so are small towns in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. So I am pretty sure that there's got to be 50 depressing towns just like Avon Park in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, because I've been to these places and I know they have more than 50 depressing towns that would qualify more for this list than Avon Park. At least you have some lakes and some proximity to Sebring where there's at least like a Walmart or something. Avon Park, I've done drive-thrus of Avon Park, and I can tell you that it would probably be among the worst in Florida for sure. But I don't think Florida deserves to have 5 or 6 towns on this list. If I see where it would come in after Immokalee for sure, but it's not like, how many. Okay, look at this up. If you have time, go on Google and write Avon Park, Florida. They have government housing in Avon Park, Florida. The government housing in Avon Park, Florida looks really nice. And not only that, they have a lake. And the lake has a beach. And I actually, on one of my videos, I mentioned that, they have a lake with a beach so that the low-income people can be eaten by alligators as a joke, referring to that's a good way of getting rid of low-income earning people is to put the projects next to a lake and put a beach in the lake and the gators will eat the people. Ha ha, big joke. Well, anyways, that was a joke referring to how nice the projects are in Avon Park, Florida. There's going to be a lot of people moving to that region because people are escaping Miami. So as soon as they have the $70,000 to get that decent house in Avon Park, Florida, a lot of people in Miami are going to be like, you know what, I'm going to take my $70,000. I'm going to move to Avon Park, Florida, buy a house cash. And yes, it's a miserable place, but at least I own my house and at least it doesn't snow. Last time I went to Sebring, I noticed a lot of Latino people in the area. Sebring is right next to Avon Park. Lots of Latinos moving into that area from Miami and New Jersey and other parts of the country. And it's because of how affordable it is. And the first time that I went up there, it was all like really country people, like really redneck Southern people. And then I go back like 6 to 8 months later, and there's a bunch of Latinos everywhere. So I've said this before on this channel, Florida is a very fast changing place. So what you think you know about Florida from a year or two ago, it's totally irrelevant. Florida is a very fast-paced, changing state, and it's changing for the better. That's the best part. I think the housing in Avon Park, Sebring is going to go up. Another great area to invest if you think that single-family homes is where you want to put your money. I don't agree with that. I used to have the notion that that was a good investment. It's better than keeping the money in the bank, or 3 or 4% type of thing. I don't like none of that crap. But I've changed my mentality on money lately a lot. I used to think more like Dave Ramsey. Without the mutual funds and all that, I don't do none of that crap. Again, I'm Latino, and like I said earlier, Latino people, we don't do that type of stuff. We think that real estate is where to put the money, and it is a good place to put the money, but I wouldn't do it right now. If I had $70,000 right now, I wouldn't buy one of these houses. But a lot of people think that real estate is where to put their money, so it's a good option. Because the house that you're getting in Avon Park for $78,000, let's say a $100,000 house in Avon Park, that's a $250,000, $300,000 house in Naples or in some other part of Florida. So, yeah, definitely I can see why people would want to invest there. If that's your mindset, that investing in real estate is good, I think it's a good area to invest. It's not my thing to do that, but, if you're into that, I guess that would be the type of place where you could do it. I stopped going by Dave Ramsey theories, and I started listening to this guy called Grant Cardone. And he thinks a little differently. He's not so much. He's more of a risk taker, and more of like forget about physical assets. He's more into like owning programs, owning software. That's why I bought this drone. That's why I'm investing in my YouTube, and it's going good so far. I can see how it makes more sense than real estate if you're really willing to put the effort in. He says I would trade illiquidity for liquidity at any time. In other words, he believes in artificial things, like things that you can't actually feel and touch, like advertisements. Those are the type of things he believes in investing in, and I'm starting to see how that makes a lot more sense in today's market. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, or in the past, real estate was more important, but he does have a point that real estate isn't really going anywhere, and that owning a chunk of real estate isn't as important now as it was in the past. I'm still going to own real estate, but that's because you have to live somewhere. But as an investment, I don't know about that anymore because, that's a whole different conversation. But anyways, Avon Park, Florida, yes, you can get a very decent house for about $70,000. Is it a miserable place? Yes. Should it be in the 50 worst cities in the country? I don't know about that. Then they have Brooksville, Florida at number 26. And let me tell you something about Brooksville, Florida. I've included it in my list, but the reason that I included it on my list is not something you can actually gauge with statistics. When I see that I've mentioned, all Brooksville, I've mentioned it. Avon Park, I've mentioned it. Immokalee, I've mentioned it. All these towns, Shady Hills, I've mentioned all these towns in my videos. And before I mentioned these places, nobody even cared to. None of these places were ever on any of these online lists. And after I did my video, which got almost 250,000 views so far, I start to see these towns pop up on other lists. And I feel a little disappointed because I feel that my work is being plagiarized. Because when I did this, I wasn't looking at that much statistics. I was looking at mostly on-the-ground knowledge of Florida. Could I be right? Could have my assumptions about these places been so close that now as new statistics come out, what I said made more sense and that other people are catching on to the statistical part of it? I think so, but Brooksville doesn't match the criteria from a statistical point of view, so I feel that there is some plagiarism with these lists, and I'm a little bit disappointed because I feel that my intellectual work has been taken and commercialized by other people. The statistics for Brooksville are for the city limits, and 90% of Brooksville is outside of the city limits, and that's where they're building new houses in places that are somewhat undesirable. But anyways, I just feel that I don't like it to see, like, it's kind of flattering but at the same time, it's not because it's my work, and I don't know, guys. Maybe I was right enough that now as new statistics come out, what I said makes more sense, but I think I'm being plagiarized. Also, I've noticed that realtors here in Naples, Florida have started to do drive-arounds of gated communities in the same exact manner with a camera attached to a vehicle. Realtors never did that. Now they're doing it because I'm doing it. They're copying me. So I'm a little disappointed that people are starting to copy me. Like, I did it and they do it, but it's different because they're realtors. They're trying to sell you a house. I am a high school dropout. Why, as a high school dropout, does a realtor who sells houses have to take my intellectual concept and plagiarize it? Because that's not a normal thing. No, that you're not going to go on the internet and find a realtor that just shows you a drive around of a neighborhood. That doesn't happen. And with a GoPro attached to the front of a vehicle, that is my intellectual property. I created that concept, okay? It's not like there's a copyright stamp on it, but that's my intellectual concept. And these realtors are realizing that I have a very good way of presenting things, and they're copying it for their for their commercial interest. However, what they don't get is that they are still a realtor trying to sell you a house, and I'm just Jose from Florida Hood Blogs, keeping it real. I'm going to tell you things exactly how they are. I don't omit errors like this community has horrible traffic. Why don't you show the traffic jam outside the community? Because I do that. A realtor isn't going to do that. I just feel that, and over years, I've had a lot of people. I remember when I first started doing scrap metal, I had a very specific way of doing it. And some of the time, this is way back when scrap metal prices were really high. This is something, I don't do this anymore. The prices are horrible now, but when scrap metal prices were really high because of the wars and stuff like that, and there was, petroleum prices were higher, like when the gas was really high back in the day. Well, during that period, I developed a specific method of picking up scrap metal, and I noticed that I would provide the service for the customer, and 2 to 3 weeks later, I would see that customer doing it themselves. So I turned on a light for them, and then they ran with it. So I've had to continue to evolve my methods, because whenever you do something and it's productive, other people are going to copy you right away. So you have to stay ahead of the ball game. So now that I'm doing my videos in a certain platform, a certain way, a certain style, there's going to be people that are going to copy me. But the difference is that they don't understand the real principles that I've learned since being on YouTube now for almost 8 years. The things that I've learned in those 8 years to understand what you guys want, how you want it, why you want it. And it's still a learning process. I have a lot more to go, but they're missing the picture. A lot of times people like to assume that other people think exactly the same way they do, and it's one of the biggest mistakes that we make as humans, is to assume that everybody else thinks the same way we do. We may look at a neighborhood and say, oh, this neighborhood's bad for this reason. And somebody else may look at the neighborhood and say, wow, I think this neighborhood is a great place to invest for another reason. So do not assume that everybody thinks the same way you do. It is the biggest mistake that we make as humans. When it comes to real estate, we all want to make a smart decision. However, most people make that decision way too late. Let me give you an example. On this list of the 50 worst places to live in the United States, they actually included somewhere in that list later on Lehigh Acres. Lehigh Acres has its good and it has its bad. I have family and friends that live there. I considered moving there a while back. The negatives about Lehigh Acres are how incommunicated it is from the rest of the money flow of Southwest Florida, and how extraordinarily high the crime rate is. But people like to mix statistics and facts, and they try to make the facts and statistics match what they believe. For example, we just had something horrible happen here in Bonita Springs, and I noticed on a Facebook group about Lehigh Acres how there was people sharing this thing saying, hey, look, this happened in Bonita Springs. The crime in Bonita Springs is horrible. And no. Lehigh Acres it's way worse than Bonita Springs. I know people who've had their house broken into 10 times in Lehigh Acres. I don't think I've known anyone in Bonita, and I know a lot of people in Bonita, and I've never had anyone in Bonita tell me that my house got broken into. So no, it's not the same. But people like to twist statistics and facts and try to make it seem like whatever choice they made with, they're going to try to justify that choice at any cost because they need the approval of other people. When they made a decision to move to Lehigh Acres, they want to justify that, whether it's right or wrong. They're not going to accept, oh, maybe I made a mistake by moving here. They would rather make it seem like their decision was the greatest decision ever, and that makes other people that they are associated with take the same decision. So Lehigh Acres is a place where realtors primarily have lied to people, misrepresented things for people, and a lot of people have moved to Lehigh. And then those people who move to Lehigh, they're not going to tell their friends back home, hey, this was pretty much a mistake to move to Lehigh. They're going to say, oh, it was the greatest thing I ever did. And then those people keep coming. It creates a cycle of misinformation. And once people have invested so much into a decision, even if that decision wasn't the best, they're still going to stand by it verbally. They're still going to pretend that this was the greatest decision they ever made, even though it was wrong, because they feel that just by that it's denial. They don't want to accept that they've made some wrong decisions. When we were looking at moving around Florida, we went to Avon Park with my dad. Me and Katie, we were starstruck. We were just confused. I took a third person along with me, Dad, and he said, Jose, what on earth are you thinking? Look at this. Look at that. Look at that. This place is not good. You take a third opinion in, and it just changes everything. Because sometimes with real estate, we see something, we want it, and we're not aware of the danger. It's so important to have a third perspective in that picture, because with real estate, we get blindsided. And even after we make that wrong decision, we still might think that we made a great decision because we're in denial and we don't want to accept that decisions that we've made with real estate are wrong. At the end of the day, I'm going to stay ahead of the wave. I'm going to keep bringing good videos that you guys like, and I'm going to continue doing my thing. But, I do feel that my intellectual property here has just been taken in I don't know. It bothers me a lot, but it is what it is. There's nothing I can really do about it. I don't think they're going to give me the credit for it. They're not going to acknowledge that they've taken my intellectual property because, a year ago, these towns were unheard of, and now they're popping up all over these lists. I think in the future, Beverly Hills needs to be taken out of that list. Lehigh Acres needs to be taken out of that list. Lehigh Acres has a lot of crime, and it is very isolated. That's not for everybody, but in today's world, just being out of the snow is great. People are going to continue to invest into Lehigh Acres, and now the prices don't make sense. I would have bought in Lehigh Acres when you can get a house for $89,000. I had the money and I didn't do it. I feel so stupid because now that house is worth 140, 150, 170. The same thing can be said about Brooksville, Florida. There was a time when if you had bought at the right time, you were going to make a sweet profit. However, people keep moving and buying because other people made a profit. That's over, guys. Those days are done. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.